This story is hard to tell. Painful. Because our outfit was in training a few weeks ago. Some of the boys who were with us aren't around anymore. They were good men. Good soldiers. They had learned to fight, and they had the guts for fighting. But when it came, it was like a sock on the back of the head. Korea started rough. The first 40 days were a battle for time, with a handful of men against an army. Yes, they were good men, good soldiers. And no story of the Korean War can be told without saying first how well they fought, against great odds. In the beginning, there were only a couple of companies from the 24th Division. No brass bands at the airport. A few days before, some of us had been in cities, spending leave time at Fuji, something like that. We weren't scared. We didn't know. We got stuff out of the planes. We moved out. Nobody said, this is it. Nobody said you have arrived in Korea to beat back 5 North Korean communist divisions. Somebody did say, we're here to delay the Reds. Okay, let's go. About 10% of us were veterans. A few roads looked like France, somewhere between Paris and Metz. Mostly the soldiers were young, no battle experience. They smiled a lot. They made the whole lot of us look like good-natured Yanks, glad to see a new town. Now, some of these boys enlisted to travel. But whoever sees travel posters about Korea, relax, come to the land of the morning calm. At first, the towns looked like any towns in this part of the world. And the South Korean troops like any soldiers. You know, they worry about the same things and get tired. I mean, tired. We all wanted to ask, what was it like up there? What kind of fighting, terrain, tactics, guns? But as far as we were concerned, those Koreans couldn't talk. We were in a completely foreign country with no time to get acquainted. They emptied a town, hardly a thing left. You couldn't buy anything, even if you had the time, which we didn't have. There are 2 ways of getting to know the terrain: walking over it and feeling how it was underneath. Underneath it was caked and sticky. The tools of a soldier's trade, a shovel and a gun. We had small stuff with us, machine guns, some howitzers. It was hard to believe. 1, 2, 3, we were smack in the middle of a war. Guns ready, aimed north, against an enemy that would look exactly like our friends, the South Koreans. These troops had seen action. They didn't have to speak. Their clothes spoke. Their shoes spoke. Their eyes spoke. We got set. Like I said, when it came, it was fast and it was all around us. They threw everything at us. We answered. We went ahead. It was like D-Day with no warning. Those kids, they became veterans overnight. Tough, hard, nervy. They moved as if they'd been with us all through Germany. There were too many North Koreans with too much heavy equipment, especially tanks. What can men with guts do against tanks? A bazooka was some defense, but there were too many tanks and too few bazookas. Day after day, it was pull back and fight again. There were too many of them. You wouldn't know where they'd come from. The rice paddies would lie quiet. We'd hide in the shadows, trying to look like a hut or a cornfield or a rice paddy. Concealment was one of our weapons. There were too many of them. The boys pulled back, tired as dogs. Because whenever they'd meet the Reds head-on, the Reds had enough men to fight us on the front and on our flanks, too. We knew it, and it was hard to face. We were hurting. Kids would drag back so beat up they couldn't be expected to fight for at least several days. Instead of a week at a rest area, we grabbed an hour anywhere. Took a shower. Sat down. Lay down. Seemed like the greatest pleasure in life was to give the feet a chance to breathe. We fell back to new positions. If you looked around at some of the foxholes, you could see a deep respect for those red mortars. Very deep. We were short on men. South Koreans carried our ammo. But we didn't know what some of the others were carrying. Turned out that many of the silent refugees filing along the South Korean roads were North Korean communists in disguise. They'd sneak through our lines and fight us from behind. We caught some, but infiltration caused plenty of casualties. We were going to watch the refugees more carefully from now on. This was a big police job in Korea, the biggest. The attack was full-sized, had to be stopped. The United States Army, a small part of it, was here to help. There'd be men in other uniforms fighting with us soon. The whole world had seen this and knew what the score was. Up near the guns, the score was against the enemy. They were losing points, losing time. There were tough decisions, but we had leaders who could make them. General Walker and General Dean. Yes, our outfits were winning. They were holding back the enemy until help could arrive. We didn't feel it yet, but reinforcements were on the way. It takes time to pour a defense program into a small country with almost nothing. Not all the stuff can get there overnight, even in an age when we're used to things traveling 400 or 500 miles an hour. Oh, we needed tanks. And jeeps soon. If some of the boys at the front could have heard the winches grind at the port, that would have been sweet music. And if something, television maybe, could have shown us the soldiers who were going to fight with us soon, maybe it would have been easier. As it was, the outfits in the foxholes needed every half-track and howitzer and tank they could get, and more, and the men to go with them. Yes, our mission in the lines was delay. Delay the Red Drive in Korea. Delay it so we could get jeeps. Delay it so we could get weapons carriers and weapons and more ammo. Get it to us, men and equipment, wet or dry. Because it was still rough going for us. And it would stay that way for months, maybe longer, until enough men would be in Korea to strike back. Yes, it was Operation Delay. Ammo was precious. One field artillery battalion against 40 tanks. We'd hold them off for a few hours in a blasting frontal attack. The Reds would envelop us on both flanks. Always trouble up ahead and trouble on the sides. We drew back south of the Kum River and burned our bridges behind us. People in big cities like Pittsburgh are bothered by smoke. Now, this smoke was black, but it didn't bother us a bit. Yes, smoke can look good when it's where you want it. There were plenty of times when the smoke was too close. Got in your eyes, so you couldn't see anything. You can take a lot, but when your buddies get hit, it hits you inside. Nobody says much, just so-and-so got it. Or so-and-so has been evacuated, he'll be okay. Or so-and-so's been evacuated. Back of us, units from the 25th Infantry Division and the 1st Cavalry Division were unloading now with baggage. All of it first class, urgent. The tanks were light jobs. They sped north where they were most needed. Smaller than the Russian monsters, but still a wonderful sight. Nothing was too good for a tank in this territory. Boys treated them like babies. They went over them from top to bottom, called them pet names. They cleaned them up better than for inspection. That's cleaning. Their tanks had heavier armor. In a duel, that was their advantage. But our advantage was some fine sharpshooters. They had giants. We had giant killers. Tejan was the worst. Ask anyone where he felt it the worst, and maybe you'll hear a few other names, because it was bad all over. But most guys will say Tejan. Some places we were just outnumbered, but in Tejan we were outnumbered, outgunned, out-tanked, and outflanked. We pushed out, trying to poke a hole in their lines. No go. We tried another direction. But at the end of every road leading out of Tejan, there were thousands of North Korean troops, plenty of T-34 tanks. It got kind of confusing. There was one hot day, 100 degrees, where we just sat. There was no place to go. It was war, not the way it is in the movies. We were all tired, including General Dean. Flank attacks had cut every escape route. We gassed up, ready for a move. We were supposed to hold this hot town for 2 days. We held it for 3. It was get out or be trapped in Tejan. We got out. We fought our way out. General Dean stayed behind. He may still be there. It was a bad road out of Tejan. Some guys didn't make it. Tejon was burning. A dead town. The men who got out were heroes. The men who didn't get out they were heroes. There's no better word. By this time, the new outfits were in the lines. Fresh, ready to shoot. Everything set just right. Nice to hear the steady crump of your own mortars. Even nicer to hear the howitzers slamming them out. Together, they're terrific. Our morale went up 5,000%. We had some pressure now. We turned it on and forced a victory. At a time like this, frontline chow tasted better than pheasant under glass. The rally was short. One outfit might do okay for a day, but on that same day, 5 other sections of the front line would be feeling the enemy's hard blows, the envelopments, the infiltrations. Some of our strongest attacks were by patrols, small groups battered by the enemy, beaten by the mountains, falling down tired. After climbing over half a dozen mountains, it made you more tired just to look at them. Felt like the bear who went over the mountain and saw another mountain. Getting anywhere in Korea was back-breaking work. You did it the Korean way, slowly. You were the bulldozer. No push-pull, click-click up here to throw a bridge across a stream in 4 or 5 hours. Every rock added up. Even the little ones. You worked 2-3 days to put an outfit on the other side of a stream. The rainy season and the Korean superhighways didn't help us get around. Wherever we went, we built our way. It was no good having any drag with the engineers. They had their own troubles. You were the engineers. In this battle, you did everything. Build, fight, hold, pull back, and destroy. Whenever we were about to leave a place, we planted it carefully. TNT. Planted it not deep, just deep enough so it would come up the way we wanted it to. The better you plant it, the better it comes up. A second-story job. This kind of gardening went on quite frequently. Very relaxing work. We were going to stall them up and down the whole front. And someday there'd be a turnabout that would pay those North Koreans off for what we'd been taking. And then we might have to put back all these bridges. We slowed them, but we couldn't stop them. Fighting is fighting, always rough. But it's rougher when you're forced to pull back. We gave them ground, they gave us time. We used every barrier, every river to make a stand. It was the best way of saving men. They beat us back to the Naktong, but we got there early enough to make it across. The Naktong was a pretty useful river. No king ever had a moat around his castle so wide and protecting. It felt like a new division was in the lines. Plenty of outgoing mail went across the Naktong River. If you've seen combat, you know what it is to have a line, a place to fight from. Well, for the first time in this Korean business, we had something we could call a line. All during the fighting, we had air power. If they had had it, we might have been through. Air power did plenty of damage to everything the enemy had and wanted to bring up. Those guys flew so low, they should have had bayonets on their propellers. In a corner of Korea, a little bigger than a beachhead, we dug in, built a village of foxholes. Only here you couldn't dig too deep on account of the rocks. On this beachhead, a lot of the boys who flew in at the beginning were still around, still smiling. There's waiting in every war. Time to find out where you were, how you were doing. We faced the enemy. We faced ourselves. Our enemies were fanatics. We were believers in one faith, that men can live together peacefully, thinking, feeling, worshiping, each in his own way. You couldn't think about anything for very long when you were planning new moves, new delaying tactics. We pulled down the bridges. We wrecked the roads. The steep hills around us were rugged. We made them more rugged for the enemy. Beyond our foxholes, we unwound some vines of our own with thorns. And beyond the tight ring of our perimeter, the enemy closed in, pushing us hard, threatening the death blow that would throw us back into the sea. How long could we hold? How long? The battle hung in the balance. And then swung to us. A great force reached Korea in a new strategy that gave the North Korean army a battle from 3 sides at once. Replacements, new units, lively, ready for business. They stole along the hills, slipped up the ridges, looking for a soft spot in the enemy's hard shell. We gave it to them steady, all up and down the line, all at once. The air dusty, smoky. This was what we used to get when we first hit Korea. Victory never comes easily. You have to be in a fight to see how tough it is. See how in an attack, guys stumble back, needing others to look after them. Always plenty of trouble. It takes men and machines to knock out a strong enemy. And as you go forward, you can expect to lose some of those who start out with you. Yes, some went back, their feet heavy, their steps slow. Kids who became men, men whose hollow-faced look showed that they'd been in the lines too long. You can't count on a straight road to victory. Sometimes it winds, goes down, goes up. Sometimes you're forced to detour. You could pick out the new troops. They walked different. Another outfit. But once over, they were like the fellas in our outfit when we landed. The same smiling Yanks, making the best of everything. And a little better than that. We battled for time in Korea and won. We had the right men, good men, good soldiers.
On 10 August, after 47 days of fighting in Korea, the tide of battle in the Pusan beachhead is ebbing and flowing for both sides. United Nations forces are dug in along a 120-mile perimeter. Communist troops, still outnumbering ours more than 2 to 1, have thus far failed in their objective, to drive UN forces into the sea or destroy them before we can take the offensive. At the southern end of our beachhead, Task Force Keene, consisting of units of the 25th Infantry Division, the 5th Regimental Combat Team, and the 1st Marine Brigade, are driving toward Chinju in our first offensive of the war. This counteroffensive throws back the Reds, who are about to launch a major attack only 35 miles from Pusan, key port for the entire beachhead. Southwest of Taegu, U.S. troops are reducing a communist bridgehead. South of Waiguan, U.S. troops are containing another bridgehead. North of Waiguan, a counterattack by South Korean troops pushes communists back across the river. Along the northern perimeter, west of Wisong, communists compel South Koreans to withdraw. At Pohang, Red troops have broken through the perimeter, threatening that port city and its airfield. However, to the north, South Koreans have recaptured Yeongdeok. In the air, Air Force, Navy, and Marine planes are giving support to ground troops along the perimeter. They also blast communications and military-industrial targets from Taegu to the North Koreans' northern border. Guns of United Nations ships also help in this mission. The struggle to defend the beachhead is a furious one, but we are holding. On 24 August, on the central sector, which is concerned with the defense of Taegu and the Naktong River line, engineers have built a pontoon bridge across a tributary of the Naktong. This pontoon bridge serves for the use of lighter vehicles and foot soldiers. But with increasing supplies moving in, there is need for a heavy equipment bridge. South Korean civilian labor is employed. Although in many sections, primitive native tools are still used, and although U.S. engineers depend greatly on Korean manpower, there is a change now since the early days of the war. Heavy construction equipment is becoming a familiar sight. An accumulation of this type of equipment, necessarily second in priority to arms and ammunition, is an indication of the vast bulk of supplies that are now being received. On 29 August, the British aircraft carrier Unicorn moves into Pusan Harbor. On deck are British troops bound for the Korean battlefront. Within a week, they are rushed to fight alongside 1st Cavalry troops east of Waiguan to help stop a threatened breakthrough along the Naktong River. These troops are the first infantrymen of a foreign nation to join in the United Nations police action. They are members of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, composed largely of Scotsmen and the Middlesex Regiment, most of whom hail from the London area. Almost all of these Britishers have served in Hong Kong for 6 months, where they underwent rigorous training in hilly country very similar to that of Korea. Except for the 3.5 bazooka and U.S.-supplied rations, these Britishers will use their own weapons and supplies. Their uniforms are jungle green, with only the regimental pipers wearing the kilts, which won the Scots the nickname, the Ladies from Hell. A C-47 transport plane is loaded with leaflets, which will be dropped over North Korean territory. These drops are being made frequently to counter enemy propaganda. The C-47 transports carry heavy loads of leaflets for long trips into North Korea. For shorter trips, T-6s are used. Safe conduct passes. If the leaflet is found on a North Korean soldier by his own officers, the penalty is death. Over enemy territory, the packets are thrown out, and the wind takes care of sorting and delivery. Enemy captives report that these messages are often memorized to avoid the danger of having the leaflet found on the person. On 30 August, the Reds are gaining in the south and in the central sector, but in the northeast near Pohang, United States and South Korean units are holding their ground against heavy opposition. In this fight near Pohang is a company of the 24th Infantry Division supported by a platoon of tanks. These units are moving forward to attack a Red position called Hill 148, a ridge about 1 mile west of Pohang. The communist drive in this area is a three-pronged thrust along the 10-mile front between Kigyi and Pohang. At this time, Pohang is in Allied hands. The enemy is infiltrating here, one group of unknown size having set up a roadblock south of Pohang, 3 miles behind the Allied lines. Infantry and tanks coordinate activities as they approach the jumping-off point. Intelligence has revealed that the communist attack on Pohang is an attempt to fulfill orders given the local Red commander to take the city at all costs in the next 24 hours. And for the Reds, it is a costly operation. An estimated 2,000 North Koreans have been killed in the last 2 days. Although U.S. elements are here in some strength, the weight of the attack is against the South Korean Army's 3rd and Capital Divisions and their 17th Regiment. This is the 10th week of the Korean War, and the fighting on all fronts has reached a peak of fury. Although at this time, military spokesmen are mentioning early offensive moves, the present situation does not appear optimistic. Enemy fire is encountered. Information goes back to the company commander. The CO's orders come forward. The attack on Hill 148 is about to begin. The attack gets underway, slowly at first, and then with an increasing firefight. This is one small action in the big fight that is raging along the entire 150-mile front in Korea. A few miles of territory changes hands again and again. If the Allied line cracks at any point, the whole Pusan beachhead can be lost. On 2 September, in the south-central sector, the 1st Marine Brigade is rushed to the battle lines near Yongsan to help throw back one of the main communist thrusts in their all-out offensive along the Naktong River. Communist strategy at this time is an attempt to achieve a major breakthrough between the 2nd Division's southern flank and the 25th Division's northern flank. These Marines have been rushed here after a brief rest, during which they regrouped. The Marines move up the high ground they must retake to secure their sector of the counterattack. The enemy is holding his fire momentarily. The Marine counteroffensive has been coordinated with the 2nd Division, the entire action being 5-pronged. One tank-supported Marine unit has moved up the main road leading west from Yongsan, while diagonally on the right and left, other Marines flank the enemy. Farther to the right and left, tank-supported 2nd Division troops advance in wide encircling movements. Marines run forward as the enemy opens fire. A wounded Marine runs back for aid. Other Marines resume the attack, moving slowly and waiting for the enemy to reveal his flanks and main position. Despite North Korean tanks, mortars, and automatic weapons, the assault continues. This counterattack along this southern bulge of the Naktong River is almost a repeat of an assault these same Marines launched 2 weeks previously when they took this same hill. The high ground in this sector has changed hands at least 5 times in 2 weeks. The Marines form a base of fire to drive the enemy off. The line builds up, and so does the firepower. Meanwhile, overhead, Air Force and Marine Corps planes support the ground troops. Carrier planes are ready for another strike on inland targets. Rockets are of particular interest at this time. 3 different types are being used. One of the first super explosive types to see service in Korea was the 5-inch Holy Moses. Later, the 11.75-inch Tiny Tim proved highly effective on bridges and similar large targets. The most recent arrival is the Navy's 6.5-inch Ram. Constant activity on these carriers has not dampened the crewman's sense of humor. It is noteworthy that the Ram rocket set a speed record for production. From its conference room conception to its appearance in combat, it took only 24 days. Aerial missions of the Navy and Marines often include both strategic and tactical action in the same strike. In the relatively small area of Korea, targets of opportunity count heavily. Gun cameras record targets of the carrier planes. Iwakuni, Japan. A B-26 raid is in preparation during the week of 6 September. The B-26 is armed with 16 50 caliber machine guns. These guns are electrically operated, and a single gunner can bring many of them to bear on the same target at once. The B-26 can carry a 5,000-pound bomb load or 5 of these 1,000-pounders. With these bombs, plus napalm, plus the heavy firepower of the machine guns, a B-26 flight is a formidable attacking unit. These planes have seen constant use in the Korean War, their targets ranging from strategic industrial areas in the north to tactical areas along the battle lines in the south. The B-26 is classified as a light bomber with a speed of more than 350 miles an hour. After their final briefing, crew members head for the field. This has become a familiar scene in United States air bases in Japan, from which B-26 sorties are flown on an around-the-clock schedule. These B-26 Douglas Invaders were formerly called A-26 bombers. They differ from the B-26 Martin Marauders used in World War II. The present B-26 is a very adaptable plane, which is often revamped for different purposes. Cannon may be substituted for the nose gun. The plane can be adapted to carry a variety of explosives, for the B-26 is designed primarily for low-level bombing. It is seldom used for the high-altitude work of the B-29. Targets are in the area of Seoul during the first week of September. The little flashes of light on the ground are tracers from the B-26 machine guns. Occasionally, enemy flak comes up at the planes. On 7 September, the U.S. Air Force flew 625 sorties in 24 hours. On 15 September, dawn breaks off the island of Walby. Ships of the UN fleet fire point blank at the island. Rockets join the softening up process. General MacArthur watches from the bridge of the flagship. This landing is a calculated risk. General MacArthur is using many of his reinforcements from the south. The first wave hits the beach. Because of the 30-foot tide fall, landing craft in the first waves must be run ashore in a period 1 hour before high tide and 2 hours after. The first troops landed here will have to stick it out alone until the next tide, 11 hours later. A bulldozer smothers a red dugout. Fight begins. All the Reds haven't been driven off by the bombardment. Captives are stripped to prevent concealment of weapons. Others are a little more formal. On 16 September, the 1st Marine Division moves through Incheon. This city is recaptured against relatively light resistance. Allied casualties are few. As these men move through Incheon, their objective is Seoul. There are 2 Allied moves on Seoul, one from the south and another sweeping around from the north across the Han River. The Han is crossed, a river village is taken, and the Marines move on toward Seoul. But there is bitter fighting ahead. Seoul is heavily defended. As these vehicles move on toward Seoul, the Marines have a message for the Reds. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. During the 6 weeks between 10 August and 20 September, the period covered by this combat bulletin, there were 3 main phases in the Korean fighting. On 10 August, reinforced United Nations forces were dug in to defend at all costs a beachhead perimeter bounded by the Naktong River. We could withdraw no farther, could no longer trade space for time if we were to hold our beachhead and the vital supply port of Pusan. Communist forces were threatening Pohang, Taegu, and Masan in their drive at Pusan. We had launched our first counterattack from Masan toward Chinju to stop the most dangerous communist drive. On 1 September, the Communists launched their biggest drive of the war, all along our beachhead perimeter. It was an all-out effort to take Pusan, eliminate our beachhead in Korea, and destroy United Nations forces. We were being pushed back again toward Masan. Taegu was in danger from the north and south, and Pohang was being taken and retaken. By 20 September, the tide of battle had changed completely. 5 days previously, U.S. Marines had made an amphibious landing at Incheon, 150 miles behind the enemy lines. The enemy, still pressing his all-out drive for Pusan, was suddenly cut off from his supplies. On 20 September, U.S. Marines were entering the outskirts of Seoul as U.S. 7th Division infantrymen fanned southward to head off communists retreating from the southern front. On our southern beachhead, United Nations forces were crossing the Naktong River and moving ahead everywhere. They were advancing at Pohang, south of Wisong, north of Taegu and at Waiguan, west of Changyong and west of Masan. We had held our beachhead. Now we were on the offensive, and it was the beginning of the end for the communist invasion of South Korea. On 20 September, almost 3 months after the North Korean communists launched their invasion, United Nations troops are in the first stages of their all-out drive toward North Korea. 5 days previously, they went from the defensive to the offensive when U.S. Marines made an amphibious landing 150 miles behind the enemy lines at Incheon. The landing cut off the enemy from his supplies and caught him in a giant United Nations pincers. Air Force, Navy, and Marine planes give support to ground troops and cut off communist attempts to bring up reinforcements from the north and south. Exactly 3 months to the day after the city of Seoul fell to the communist invaders, UN forces recapture this South Korean capital. These are Marines and U.S. 7th Division troops advancing into Seoul under enemy fire. Street fighting rages throughout the city. The Reds have fortified many of the buildings, and Red tanks may appear around any corner. It had been hoped that Seoul might be recaptured with a minimum of destruction. But this is impossible, as the Reds stage a house-to-house fight. After a 5-day battle for Seoul, General MacArthur announces the city's recapture on 26 September. There is still fighting in the city, but the main communist garrison is now fleeing to the north. UN troops rest as they close another chapter of history. At the Ashia Air Base in Japan during the battle for Seoul, the 187th Airborne Regiment arrives from the United States. Ammunition and other supplies are loaded on unit vehicles which will be flown to Korea. The paratroopers, 2,400 strong, board C-54 transports and C-119 flying boxcars for their flight to the combat zone. Kimpo Airfield is the destination. The paratroopers are rushed to staging areas as fast as they unload. The same C-54s fly wounded back to Japan. In its first 4 days of operation, the Kimpo airlift evacuated 313 wounded to Japan. Cargo and passenger planes are coming into Kimpo at a rate of 1 every 10 minutes. Typical cargo is this disassembled 280-ton bridge. These pontoon boats are part of the bridge, which was shipped entirely by air. The airfield is inspected by Air Force leaders past and present. In the group are General George C. Kenney, Commanding General, Air University, Lieutenant General George C. Stratemeyer, Commanding General, U.S. Far East Air Forces, and General Carl Spaatz, retired, former commander of the U.S. Air Force. In the background is a captured Yak fighter plane found in good condition. Now land-based at Kimpo are Marine carrier planes aiding in the tactical support of ground forces north of Seoul. This F-7F Tiger Cat night fighter proves especially valuable during this stage of the fighting north of Seoul. F-7Fs are equipped with radar and are very effective against convoys and troop concentrations at night and in bad weather. These Tiger Cats and Corsairs are being loaded with 5-inch rockets for a strike near Seoul. October 1950. The USS Missouri steams off the coast of Korea. For the first time on an American battleship, the United Nations flag is hoisted. Admiral Allen Smith and Captain Irving Duke honor it and the cause of freedom for which it stands. Slowly, the Big Mo's massive 16 inchers swing into position, ready to lay down a barrage on enemy coastal concentrations and strongpoints. Inside the Big Mo, as each hour approaches, the projectiles, weighing more than a ton each, are brought up from the magazine on special elevators. And one by one are loaded into the breech. Trained and skilled as a team, the gun crew work with clockwork precision as they ready the guns and load bags of powder into the breech. An officer takes a last-minute reading on the target and everything is set. Gun covers off. The last seconds tick away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire! Salvo after salvo pour into the enemy positions as the Missouri opens up with everything it's got, pounding the enemy shore batteries and installations. Reds fight back, their shells narrowly missing the ship. Big and small guns carry on the barrage, hitting supply lines, wiping out ammunition dumps, hammering a halt to the Red Army's aggression. A tropical typhoon hits the U.S. Sakai Army base in Japan. With rain and wind ranging up to 110 miles per hour, it is the worst storm to hit Japan in 16 years. Corrugated metal roofing flies through the air like paper. Most of the tile, shingle, and corrugated metal roofs are damaged. The concrete structures withstand the storm well, although windows are broken and there is water damage. There are no military casualties from the storm since most of the troops remain indoors in the stronger buildings, safe from the falling trees and power lines. But among the Japanese in the storm's path, 135 are killed, over 1,000 injured, and over 200,000 made homeless. The heaviest military damage is suffered by wooden and tar paper buildings. These tropical storms are expected near the Sea of Japan at this time of the year. October 17 is a suspenseful day for the U.S. 1st Cavalrymen as they advance into the outskirts of Pyongyang, capital city of North Korea. The city is known to be heavily fortified, and it is expected that the Reds will make a death stand for their capital. It is reported that the Reds have 30,000 men defending Pyongyang. Another Red is added to the 75,000 captured so far. A vehicle burns beside the road. Ammunition explodes in the fire. The attack is led by tanks as the 1st Cavalry advances under fire toward the center of the city. The railroad guides them. Then, surprisingly, the enemy fire weakens as U.S. infantrymen reach the heart of the city. The Reds are withdrawing. Although there is occasional rear guard fire and sniper activity, the main Red force has begun to flee northward in disorganization. A company medic gives first aid to a cavalryman wounded in the street fighting. As the first cavalrymen overrun the city, South Korean troops join them. The ROK forces met heavy resistance on the east side of town, but finally fought their way through after 6 hours. They are following the retreating enemy northward. An estimated Red force of 30,000 is now fleeing Pyongyang. South Koreans and 1st Cavalrymen join forces, decide their zones of action, and move on. In the eastern area of Pyongyang, near the Taedong River, the South Koreans encounter a pocket of enemy rear guard troops and pause to wipe them out. Only small arms fire is necessary, as the river is crossed by bridge and assault boats. As UN forces take over the city, the North Korean Communist government has vanished, presumably having fled north across the Manchurian border. The heavily fortified capital of Korean communism is now under the United Nations flag. As UN forces take the North Korean capital at Pyongyang, a new threat to the Reds gets underway at Kimpo Airfield. Paratroopers of the 187th Airborne Regiment plan to jump ahead of the Reds fleeing Pyongyang, cutting off their escape route to the border. The planes are C-47 transports and C-119 boxcars. There are over 4,000 men in this operation, which consists of 2 separate drops on 20 and 21 October. The destination is a point 33 miles north of Pyongyang, where the Reds are fleeing through the towns of Sukchon and Suncheon. And here they go. The paratroopers bail out in waves from a dozen planes at a time. On the ground, there is practically no opposition. The attack comes as a complete surprise. Watching the jump is General MacArthur, who flew here from Japan to observe this first airborne operation of the Korean War. Flying over the attack area in his Constellation, the United Nations commander stated, "This closes the trap on the enemy." Of particular interest in this drop is the parachuting of heavy equipment, vehicles, and artillery. The equipment drop takes place 10 minutes after the personnel have landed. Most of the material lands without damage, and the paratroopers rush out to put it into action. Transportation found available on the scene is pressed into service. Although the big jump was delayed at the start by bad weather, it moves like clockwork once it gets underway. Casualties are few. Out of the 4,064 men who made the 2 jumps, only 90 men are listed as jump casualties, and most of these consist of broken legs and sprains. Evacuation is rapid. specially equipped helicopters land to carry the wounded, and they are quickly on their way back to the hospitals. Shortly after the paratroopers take their positions, they are joined by tanks of the 1st Cavalry Division, which have pushed through from Pyongyang. As these forces join, the last remnants of the Red Army are compressed into an area only 50 miles from the Manchurian border. On 17 September at Pusan Air Base, a transport plane arrives with the first big-name entertainer to visit the troops in Korea. Al Jolson, often billed as the world's greatest entertainer, is in the midst of his last road tour. A veteran of years in show business and months of entertaining troops in World War II, in Europe, Africa, India, and the South Pacific, Al Jolson disregarded his doctor's warning and at the age of 64 set out to entertain troops in hospitals and at the Korean battlefront. In front of the audience he liked best, Jolson gives one of his last performances. GI audience enjoys his act. Al entertained Korean War casualties in Japan before arriving in Korea, and already has used up much of the seemingly boundless energy which he put into every performance. It was impossible for Al Jolson not to give out with all his energy and all his heart. His gaiety and rhythm was infectious, and he knew it could bring joy to others. On 23 October, 6 days after he gave this performance, Al Jolson died from a heart attack in San Francisco. One of his last acts in Korea was to raise a United Nations flag. During the month covered by this combat bulletin, the United Nations drive into North Korea moved ahead with surprising rapidity. On 20 September, UN forces were fighting in the outskirts of Seoul, fanning south from the Incheon landing and breaking out of their old beachhead. By 5 October, Republic of Korea troops had crossed the 38th parallel and were 55 air miles beyond the imaginary border between North and South Korea. On the west, U.S. troops were meeting some resistance north of Seoul. United Nations forces, including U.S., British, and Australian troops, were regrouping in expectation of a full-scale drive across the parallel after the United Nations voted approval for General MacArthur to send his troops into North Korea. By 20 October, communist forces were staggering, throwing off their uniforms and surrendering at the rate of 2,400 daily. The day before, Pyongyang, North Korean capital, had been captured by UN troops. 2 hours after Pyongyang was declared secure, members of the 187th Airborne Regiment dropped from planes 33 miles above Pyongyang and about 75 miles from the Manchurian border. South Korean troops drove westward to link up with the paratroopers. On the east coast, South Korean troops had taken Wonsan with unexpectedly light resistance and were advancing far to the north. Disintegrating communist troops were attempting to flee to the Manchurian border. There was still fighting ahead, but at this time it appeared that the Korean War was, as General MacArthur phrased it, definitely coming to an end.